Our next speaker is Dr. Derek Stitt. Dr. Stitt is a physician, teacher, and podcaster with the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. A Robertson County native, Derek received his undergraduate and medical degrees from the University of Kentucky, right here in this state, before heading north to Minnesota for his residency. Since 2018, he has served as an attending physician with the Mayo Clinic's Department of Neurology. That's the brain. And he provides clinical training in neuroscience. Derek is also a senior contributor to the Neurology podcast. Go listen to him speak. His academic interests include neurologic injuries associated with substance abuse. Let's now welcome Derek!
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Juma. I just had my first Focus Energy Water, so I'm really excited right now to be here and talk to you all. I'm really feeling great. So let's make sure we're clicking through here. I'm really excited to talk to you about my path from small town Kentucky to practicing medicine at Mayo Clinic. And because this is Idea Fest after all, I figured I'd share with you a few ideas and innovations that have really reshaped medical care in a positive way that have been introduced in the last few years. So getting into that, we'll start with my day job. This is the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. I chose a nice stereotypical picture that I took from the parking lot with plenty of snow on the ground. This is what it looks like in February there, and it was an adjustment to have that much cold weather coming from Kentucky, but I adapted and got a really silly, ridiculous beaver hat, and that's really helped me survive. So if you haven't heard of the Mayo Clinic, it is, I'm so fortunate to work there at this world-renowned place. It is consistently rated the #1 hospital in the nation by U.S. News and World Report, and Newsweek even rated us the #1 hospital in the world. And if you look at the logo from Mayo Clinic, you see there's 3 shields, and that represents 3 pillars of patient care, which is our first and foremost value. The primary value of Mayo Clinic is the needs of the patient come first. And so that's what we're all about at the end of the day. And in order to make sure we're caring for patients and putting their needs first, we have to educate future providers. And so education is another major shield. And then research and advancing the field of medicine. I see patients in the clinic. This is my exam room where I see patients, as outpatients. So that's when you just go to the doctor and you come home from your appointment. And then I also see patients in the hospital, patients that are sick enough that they can't come to the clinic. They have to be admitted, maybe through the emergency department because they had a neurological emergency. And that includes during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, which is why you see the masks right there in the hospital, which is a whole nother talk for a whole nother day. So what does a neurologist do? So let's see if the pointer's working here. It is. So I treat and diagnose patients with disorders of the nervous system, which includes the brain, and this person obviously has a really big brain problem. Even if you don't know how to read CTs, you know that there's probably something there that shouldn't be, and then it was removed and the patient did well and survived. I diagnosed disorders of the spinal cord, okay? And then the peripheral nerves that go out and control and sense our arms and legs, and even the muscle. This is the muscle under a microscope. There's a lot of confusing pictures. What does that really mean? So some notable conditions that I'm sure all of you, or most of you have heard of or know someone in your family who might have one of these conditions even. So migraine, the most common reason to see a neurologist is headache, seizures, stroke, multiple sclerosis, dementia like Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's, brain tumors, and literally hundreds more, some of which I only recently learned about in the last few years because we're discovering new things all the time. But aside from patient care, which is this was why I got this is why I became a neurologist. My 1A passion is education, and I educate so I educate folks on clinical neurology, on how to take care of neurology patients, and I do that at multiple levels. So on the top left here, that's me educating other physicians. So I educate other physicians and neurologists to help them stay up to date. I educate medical students. This is the Mayo Clinic School of Medicine. Looks like a kind of a Harry Potter kind of building there in Rochester. I educate future physician assistants in our physician assistant program. But my main educational passion is educating our residents. And so those are folks who completed medical school and are now doing 4 years of training to become a neurologist. In addition to that, to education, we talked about the research pillar. And my research and also my clinical focus, I'm a general neurologist. I see anything and everything with the nervous system that comes in the door. But I have a little corner of neurology that is near and dear. And that is the type of injuries that can happen to the brain from recreational drug use, which some of you, may have know someone or seen someone affected by recreational drug use. And unfortunately, the brain and other parts of the nervous system are a victim of the type of damage that can cause. And so I publish on that. I teach some courses on that. This is an example of a case of a very, very severe, devastating brain injury in someone who had taken opioids, fentanyl. But it's not all serious stuff. I live in Minnesota, and I've learned to embrace it. And you get to see cool things that it's hard to see in Kentucky. Like these are the northern lights up on the border of Minnesota and Canada. Out on a boat one night. And then I do live up to a little bit of a physician stereotype of playing too much golf, but I'm not very good, and so I end up in these bunkers that are over my head, like this one in Scotland. And I even, and just to plant more roots, I married a lovely Minnesota lady. That's my wife, Clara. So that's where I'm at, but the title of the talk is How Did We Get Here? And to do that, you got to go back to the roots, and you never want to forget your roots. And so in order not to forget my roots, I keep a picture of my grandparents' farm in my office that I see every day. And I come from Robertson County, Kentucky, born and raised, and that's the least populated county in Kentucky, a little over 2,000 people. I went to a school that was kindergarten through 12th grade. It had about 400 students. And so my parents still live on the family farm there. That's my mom and dad, Billy and Libby, and they're in the audience today along with my wife. And come from modest beginnings. Grew up on a farm. That's the family farmhouse that I grew up in and lived in until I went to college. And that's me. That's probably the last. I probably never had hair. I started losing my hair right after that picture. It was all downhill. And that's my dad and my baby sister in the background. So a little bit about a timeline. I think sometimes a little bit of a timeline to give you some scope about the journey is helpful. And so I graduated high school in 2006 before all of you were born. And then I graduated from UK with a bachelor's in biology in 2010. I graduated from UK medical school in 2014. And then I moved to Minnesota and did 4 years of neurology residency training and graduated as the class of 2018. And then another good timeline of how long it took, so you can just see less and less hair in every photo. So yeah. So Idea Fest, innovation. Innovation for me was because we talk about it a lot, even at Mayo Clinic, when we try to be innovative, and it's like there's this pressure. A lot of my surveys and meeting with sort of my superiors are about, how can we be innovative? But I think if you just look at the definition of the word, it becomes a lot less intimidating, at least to me, and that's just to do something in a new way. If you're doing something in a new way that hopefully is a way that's more efficient or has a better outcome or more higher of a yield, then you're innovating. And so you can innovate too. And I'll give you a few examples of how innovation and ideas have really changed the landscape of medicine, just to hopefully inspire you. So this slide is about immunotherapy for cancer. So there was a Nobel Prize about 6 years ago for the folks who helped discover this technology. And now there are medications that unlock your own nervous system to attack cancer. And it has really saved lives and added many years to people's lives when they otherwise would not have had it, like with metastatic melanoma, which is a very aggressive skin cancer. And with these therapies, it's really provided a new frontier. Sometimes, though, it makes the immune system too active, and sometimes it attacks the brain, and that's where I have to come in. So, we fixed one problem, and we've made another, problem, and we come in to help with that. A Mayo Clinic invention. So a Mayo Clinic gastroenterologist, that's a doctor of the digestive system, developed a test, a DNA test, where you send in a stool sample and it can detect colon cancer with about 94% accuracy. okay? And that's revolutionary because otherwise, folks, and you may have had your parents have to do this, go get a colonoscopy where they use a camera and a scope and they enter your colon and look for cancer. And so if you could screen for cancer and not have to have that procedure done, boy, I think we'd all, take that one, couldn't we? And that was developed, it's called Cologuard, it's developed at the Mayo Clinic. And it's really helped with health equity and access too, because you can imagine folks who live out in very rural areas. It can be hard for them to travel into a hospital to get a procedure like this, and they can actually do it through the mail. So quite remarkable. And even in my own field of neurology, even when I was in training, we would see someone with dementia, and we would think this type of dementia seems like Alzheimer's disease, which is a disorder of progressive memory loss. And we'd say, you have Alzheimer's disease, but really what we were saying was you have probable Alzheimer's disease. We didn't know for sure until the patient, if they passed away and agreed to an autopsy. And if they saw these little changes in the brain under the microscope that we see in Alzheimer's. But in recent years, there's been innovation, and we now have biomarkers. So I can do a spinal tap on someone where we put a sterile needle in between their vertebrae, pull off their spinal fluid, which also surrounds their brain, and we can send it off for the proteins found in Alzheimer's disease and tell them that this is, with very high, just like the Cologuard, 90-some% chance of it being Alzheimer's disease, which in an even newer frontier is that, and you may have seen this in the news, we have our first biological drug for Alzheimer's disease that was approved in the last year. And it helps clear some of these proteins that I told you about that we test for in the spinal fluid out of the brain. Now, it's not a wonder drug, it's not a cure, but for a small percentage of patients, it did seem to slow how fast their memory loss got worse, which, we'd like for a much better outcome than that, but it's compared to absolutely nothing, it's a win. And hopefully this technology can springboard into more advances and maybe, eventually a much better treatment or cure. So, how did I have to innovate in my own practice? Well, I had to change the way I taught. So when I came out of residency, even at that point, 2018, I was still learning, just like I'm talking to you right now, in a lecture hall, taking notes or reading a book. Or if I wanted to teach, I had to publish a paper or give a talk. But now I'm teaching through podcasting, and I'm teaching through audio. And I'm able to reach a much larger audience. I'm part of the core contributor team to the Neurology Podcast, which is the biggest neurology podcast, and it goes all over the world with thousands of downloads every day, every week, all around the world. And I'm able to teach neurology to people that I will never meet in countries that I may never go to. And that's quite an awesome thing. And my home office makes a nice recording studio, as you can see there. So to wrap up, this 12-year journey after high school of training certainly had its ups and downs, and there were many times where I felt like and even literally did bang my head into the wall. And it can feel like at times, I'm sure you can relate to this, that it feels like we're told to chase this pot of gold, and it seems like we're chasing this pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, and we never actually get to the pot of gold. But I can say that if along your journey, you're working, you have purpose, and you serve others in some way, then that's the ultimate reward. And so that's what I'll leave you with today. Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk a little bit more. Thank you.